Hey, before I dive into today's episode, I have something really exciting to share with you. For the first time ever, I'm offering a Black Friday coaching special. So if you've ever thought about working with me, or even if you've worked with me in the past and you want a little bit more support this holiday season, this is the perfect chance for you to take action. Here is what is included. 1 full month of personalized coaching, so we'll meet on Zoom for an entire month of support. That includes 3 private one-on-one sessions tailored specifically to meet your needs, plus unlimited Voxer support between sessions, so you can get real-time advice and encouragement from me whenever you need it. And the best part is this special is open to both new and previous clients, and the investment you make, $747, can be applied to a future coaching package if you decide to continue working together. So just imagine starting this new year with a better communication, less conflict, and more connection with your teenager. I know that's something we all want, especially during this time of year. Now, here's the important part. This Black Friday coaching special is only available until Monday, December 2nd. It ends at midnight, and the spots are limited. So if this feels like the right time for you, don't wait. To grab your spot, click the link in the show notes. Once payment is received, I'll reach out to you to schedule your sessions and get the ball rolling. This is your chance to invest in the relationship you want with your teen and in yourself as a confident parent. All right, let's dive into today's episode. I'm Jennifer Della Quadri, and this is the Raising Happy Teens podcast, where you learn how to successfully guide your teenager into adulthood without losing your sanity in the process. Let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is all about lunch. No. This episode is all about what's known as the sandwich generation, and this is a newer term to me, but it makes sense. So basically, sandwich generation is where many of us are in our lives, where we are sandwiched between our older teenagers, young adults, and our aging parents. And we're in a situation where we need to care for both. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what the sandwich generation is, why it's more common now than it has been in the past, some of the challenges that come with being part of this sandwich generation, and of course, what to look out for to know if it's really taking a toll. And as always, I will be giving you some tips and pointers on how to manage some of the strain that can come along with it. So let's dive in. So again, as I mentioned, it's the sandwich generation. So the terms that go along with it all have to metaphorically do with sandwich. So here you are in the middle of 2 slices of bread. Those slices are your kids and your parents, essentially. But there are different types of sandwiches. So let's dig into that. I hope you're not hungry. I hope you've had your lunch and this doesn't trigger your hunger response. You have to laugh about it because some of these things are a lot to deal with, and laughing through it sometimes is a coping mechanism. Apparently, that's one of mine. So one of them is a traditional sandwich, which is, as I mentioned, adults who are in their 40s and 50s, and they have both their parents and their children that they need to support. That's the traditional. There's also what's known as the club sandwich, which is people in their 50s and 60s, and they're between aging parents, adult children, and possibly grandchildren that they're needing to support. So like a club sandwich, there's a stack, right? And there's more than one layer in each stack. So that's the club sandwich. And then there's what's known as the open face sandwich, which is anyone who's involved in elder care. So maybe you're not caring for your teenage, late teen, or young adult children financially and emotionally and all of that, but you are caring for an aging parent. So all of these things, whatever type of sandwich you're in, if you're listening to this and you are taking care of your parents and or your kids at the same time, you're nodding your head. It's hard. And it's hard on so many levels. So first, before we get into that, let me explain a little bit more about why this is so much more of a thing now than it has been in the past. The first is that people are having children later in life. And so when their children are getting to late teens, young adult, and they're going to need a little more support financially and potentially staying at home, which I'll get into in a second, the grandparents or your parents are older than they were. So my parents had me when they were in their early 20s, and their parents were only 20 years older than them. So their parents were 40 when I was born. And I think about that right now. I'm like, having a grandkid at 40 seems like, wow, you've lived a full life. And at that time, of course, I was young. I was like, man, 40 is old. But times have changed. People started having kids later in life. I had my first child, my first daughter, when I was 30. Of course, my parents, as you know, math-wise, were only 20-ish years older than I am. So mine are pretty young compared to many of my peers, relatively. But not all situations are like that. So, of course, that's one of the reasons we're having kids later in life. So that kind of adjusts the timeline. The other is that so many of those kids, as they go off to college, if they do, or they move out, they come back because they can't afford it, or they're still trying to figure themselves out. So these are known as boomerang kids. Like, they go away, but then they come back. And you know what? I'm all for having a long-term relationship with your kids. And I actually met someone who I'm inviting onto the podcast coming up pretty soon, but she studies and is part of teaching about traditional communal family living, to where there's multi-generations and the benefit of it. But this, of course, is one of the potential strains, is if you don't have that standard of expectation in your family line, where we are living in multi-generational ways where we all support each other. It really does fall on to the generation that is working and has the physical ability and mental ability to care for everyone. So they go away and they come back, and they may or may not have a job at that point. And that has to do with the economy, the way things cost so much, and buying houses and rent and all of the things that have shifted since you and I were that age. It's not as easy to live independently. And then also the job market, depending on what they studied or what they want to do, there may not be a job for them. So they're coming back. Gone are the days for many people of where they're 18 and you're like, boop, okay, bye, I'm kicking you out of the nest. That doesn't really happen as much anymore. So, of course, that's going to add to the likelihood of the sandwich situation happening. And so another thing adding to it is, on the other end, life expectancy is getting longer, and which is great. So people are getting the healthcare that they need, and there's medical advancements that really provide for a longer life. But that does make it so that your parents are alive older and maybe need your help for a little bit longer. So it puts you smack dab in the middle, taking care of the two. And by taking care of, I mean providing your emotional support and your financial support, depending on the situation that you're in. Maybe your parents didn't set themselves up financially to be able to be independent, so you may have to pay for their care. You may have to pay for their living costs. You may have to go to the grocery store for them. So you're really providing your energy and your emotional care, but you're also likely providing, or sometimes providing, financial support. So all of this caretaking on both ends, if it were to just be one or the other, is hard enough. It's enough of a giving of yourself. But when you have both at the same time, it's going to take its toll. So some of the challenges and results that could happen as you become part of the sandwich generation is, of course, financial strain. When you are financially supporting those two demographics of people, those two family members in your life. And of course, the emotional stress that comes with that. Part of that is the role reversal stress of you're now caring for your caretaker, and that can really take a toll on you. And there's something called anticipatory grief, which explains so much of like that. I know that things are going down this path, and I know I'm going to be experiencing this loss. And I'm actively experiencing this loss in watching my aging parents lose some of their ability to do the things that they used to be able to do. So there's role reversal, and there's also anticipatory grief happening. And just watching that go through. Also, as a result of all of the energy you're giving, it's sometimes easy to just start neglecting your self-care. So not having the capacity to prioritize sleep and healthy eating, spending time with friends, exercising, taking care of your mental health. It also might have a negative impact on your relationships, because when you're fully taxed or when you're feeling drained, it's hard for you to be your fullest, authentic, loving self with the people who are close to you, like your spouse or partner or your kids or your friends. So your relationships may be suffering as a result. It's also sometimes harder to just manage all of the obligations in your life, like work, or even prioritizing things like hobbies and relationships that really matter to you. And just a general feeling of overwhelm and excess stress. And that all really boils down to caretaker burnout. I've talked about burnout a couple of times on this episode, on this podcast and on this episode, because it applies. I've talked about general burnout, like caregiving burnout, and I've talked about mom burnout. But basically, when you're somebody who's caring for the needs of others, this can happen. And so definitely go check out those podcasts if this is something you're suspecting that you're experiencing. But if you're not sure, some of the signs of caregiver burnout are that you're having new feelings of anxiety. So maybe you didn't really struggle with anxiety too much in the past, but you're feeling more anxious than usual. New symptoms of depression. So again, maybe you never really felt depressed before, but you're feeling it now. You're having insomnia or difficulty sleeping, and you've never really had that before. You're more frustrated, angry, and irritable than you used to be. And as I'm listening to this, I'm also like, well, these are also symptoms of perimenopause. How fun that we get to go through menopause and being part of the sandwich generation at the same time. Like, oh, chef's kiss. So fun. But yes, all of these could be applied to other things too, but they're also signs of parental or caregiving burnout. You're getting sick more often. You may be gaining weight or losing weight. You may have a new diagnosis of heart disease or some other health condition. You're withdrawing from your friends and family, and you might be using unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol or drugs. All of these are symptoms that there's something deeper going on and that something needs to shift for you as much as possible. So let me get into that. If you are in a situation where you're like, man, I'm going through it right now, here's some strategies. And just like anything I talk about with this podcast, it really starts with finding a balance between your obligations for caring for others and your obligation to care for yourself. And if you missed it, I did a live last week. I did a 5-day live in the Raising Happy Teens parent group and also on Instagram on how to set healthy boundaries without the guilt. And it was really associated with how to prioritize your values and what's important to you this holiday season so you can actually really enjoy it. Definitely go check it out if you are in the group or if you're following me on Instagram. But it applies in this situation too, because how you do one thing is how you do all things. So if you have trouble setting boundaries with this caregiving role, you likely struggle with it in other areas as well. So definitely finding a balance is a really important number one strategy. And another few things that could help is if you have an older teen or like a young adult who's ready to be independent, but maybe isn't quite there yet, let your priority be, instead of I'm caring for them and taking care of all of their needs, to I'm helping them find a job. I'm helping them generate income so that I don't have to pay for their stuff. And yes, that may mean that they're going to live with you for a while just to save money, but prioritizing helping them get a job can definitely take the strain off of you financially and energetically. Also, if your parents are able to live with you. Now, I know not all situations are going to allow for that. You may not have the room for that in your house. You may not want that to happen. Totally understandable, but if it can save a little money and probably some time if you're not needing to drive to do the things and to visit them and to care for them, if they can live with you. That's where that intergenerational living could come in. And also with the boundaries, if you have the capacity to do that. If you don't, looking for ways that you can get support outside so you're not the one doing it all, like caregiving services that can come and support your parents, whether it's more involved, whether they're on a regular basis, or maybe they just come from time to time to check in. There's Meals on Wheels, like organizations like that, or maybe somebody who does shopping for your parents, or maybe a meal delivery service. So finding ways to where they can get support so that you're not having to do it all, or having like a medical alert system so that you're not on edge all of the time, like, are they okay? Are they okay? So that they can get the support they need if there is an emergency. It takes the stress off of you a little bit. And also just to be really clear with whoever it is you're supporting about how much you can give, how much time, how much money, and be very clear with that and be willing to stick with it just to protect yourself. And then if this is really something you struggle with, whether it's setting boundaries or how to manage the strain that comes with being a caretaker of your teen, of your kids, of your parents, sandwich generation or not, to be able to have a space to talk about it. And this is one of the things that we caregivers usually talk about last, is how we're going to take care of ourselves through it all, because we're seeing the need in the other person and we're like, oh, I'll take care of myself when, this is not such an issue anymore. But I heard something the other day. It was just a reminder to me of and it has to do with meditation. If you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, you need to set aside an hour to meditate. If you don't have 10 minutes, you need to reprioritize here and get even more time, right? Give to yourself more if you feel like you don't have enough. And that's where talking to somebody, having a space to just clear it out where you don't have to feel judged, and really being able to share and express your needs with that family member or those family members with compassion and without the guilt, it can take a huge mental load off and an energetic load off. And also just recognize this is a tough stage of parenting. So many people talk about when the kids are babies or when they're toddlers and the terrible twos. It's like, yeah, that's tough. But this is tough on a different level. It's like an emotional toughness that we go through at this phase. Because when you're caring for your teen and you're also responsible for whether it's your parents or other things in your life, it's hard to prioritize yourself, to eat the healthy food and spend time with people who light you up and engage in all of those activities that you love, because it's like, I need to care for them first. And just know, if you're feeling that strain, I'm here for you. If you're feeling maxed out, I am here for you. And as your partner, I can help you sort through those challenges you're having and just make a simple, actionable plan to feel more balanced in your life, to feel more in control, more grace and more ease, even though things are challenging, because you can have both at the same time. You can have a challenging situation and handle it with grace and ease at the same time, and I can help you bridge that gap. And I'm enrolling new clients right now. For now and for next year, space is limited. So if you are looking for support with this, schedule a consultation with me. We'll get on the phone, we'll talk about what's going on, and I will share with you step by step how we can work together to help bring more ease and more flow into your life. And we can start right away, or if you want to give yourself a really great holiday present, now is the perfect time to do so. So click the link in the show description to secure your time, and we'll connect. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. If you liked this episode, I'd like to invite you to join Raising Happy Teens, my free online community for parents of teenagers, where every week I host Ask a Coach. You bring your parenting questions, and I provide expert advice and coaching. Click the link in the show notes to join today. I'll see you inside.